You got into Harvard Law?
What, like it's hard?
You ever just have one of those days?
I object, Your Honor!
Those days where sometimes the coffee is just too hot.
It's an infringement on your constitutional rights. It's outrageous, egregious, preposterous.
Or when the dry cleaner loses your favorite pair of pants.
Mr. Gambini, are you mocking me with that outfit?
Or maybe you're just having a hard time, like one Colorado inmate who hurt himself rappelling down a jail wall and then claimed it was the sheriff's officials' fault because they made escaping a little too easy. But is all of that really worth suing over? Hundreds of lawsuits are filed every day in the United States and here in Germany for claims ranging from legitimate to ridiculous. And out of all of the curious and crazy differences that we've documented here on our channel between the United States and Germany, there's actually one fascinating thing that we actually have in common with one another. We both regularly top the list for the most sue-happy citizens on the planet.
Oh my God, I gotta call my brother. I better call my housekeeper. I gotta call my lawyer. Forget my lawyer.
So why do so many Germans have lawyer insurance? Do Americans simply use litigation in place of legislation and regulation? And at the end of the day, what do our differences in legal recourse say about our respective cultures' views on risk and responsibility?
And the truth shall set you free!
Well, go ahead and grab your room temperature cup of coffee and let's get started. You know, when I sat down to do the research for this video, I started with one seemingly simple question. Where is the most litigious country in the world? Well, interestingly enough, like most things, it kind of depends. If you measure this by lawsuits per capita, one researcher found that Germany does in fact take the top spot, with a whopping 123.2 cases per 1,000 people. And amongst a global comparison, the US comes in at 5th in this measurement, at 74.5 per 1,000 people. But that might not actually be the best measurement. Take criminal cases as an example. A person faced with criminal charges has no choice about defending him or herself, so one could reasonably argue that the number of criminal cases reveal more about the crime rate in a country and the efficiency of the police than about access to justice. And we can also make this same argument about civil proceedings as well, like divorces, for example. Anyone who seeks a divorce in the United States or Germany has no choice but going through the courts. But the number of cases and divorces are more likely to reflect the stability of marriage as a social institution than necessarily about the availability of legal remedies. So what if we looked at all of this from a monetary standpoint? Well, in the commercial sector, the United States definitely comes out on top. In fact, US companies spend a whopping 166% more on legal services than their global counterparts. And all of this legal battling means that there certainly isn't a shortage of workers for lawyers in the United States. According to reports, the US again tops the list for number of lawyers per capita, where there's a reported 1 lawyer for every 300 people. And for reference, in this metric, Germany comes in 7th, with 1 lawyer per 593 persons. But to be fair, the relationship between the number of lawyers and overall litigious behavior isn't exactly clear-cut. So let's take a step back and take a look at due process in both countries. So as I just mentioned, Germany is home to the highest number of court cases per capita. And that's at least partially due to the fact that suing somebody in Germany is surprisingly easy. Say a German person or company owes you money but won't pay. German civil court procedure, regulated by the Code of Civil Procedure, knows no jury, no pretrial discovery, and no pretrial witness statements. Furthermore, German civil courts work fairly swift. On average, a lawsuit takes less than 6 months to be decided. But perhaps Germans also sue more frequently because it's actually relatively cheap to do so here. The German justice system provides lawyers and clients with very transparent rules regarding legal costs. The claimant has to pay court fees, and the exact sum depends on the amount in dispute. Plus, as an incentive for the parties to reach a settlement, there's actually a rule that 2/3 of the court fees are actually returned if the court does not have to actually write a verdict. Now, somewhat similar to the United States is that the costlier part of the whole process is actually relative to lawyer fees. The Federal Act on Lawyer Remuneration regulates the fees a lawyer is entitled to charge his or her client. Again, as with the court fees, the lawyer fees correspond to the amount in dispute. And these lawyer fees are all in part of why it is actually so fascinating to me that having legal insurance is actually super popular here. In fact, according to a 2020 survey, 41% of the German population holds such a policy. And even more surprisingly, the same survey says that 64% of respondents with this type of insurance actually use it. And this is in strong contrast to my fellow American citizens, with only 6% having such legal insurance. But if it's so quick and cheap to actually sue in Germany, why the high rate of legal insurance? What gives? Well, for starters, if you go to court, your legal insurance pays for all of the legal costs, even if you lose. And that's extremely important because unlike in the United States, in German private law, a winner-takes-all rule applies in litigation. This means that the person that loses in court has to bear all of the costs of a court case. This includes court fees, attorney fees of both sides, which is actually regulated by German law, and costs for necessary experts or to reimburse witnesses. And overall, while it might be cheaper to sue someone here in Germany, going to court can still cost you hundreds, if not thousands, over even the simplest matter.
All right, Ma, listen. We gotta get an attorney, and it's gonna cost a lot of money.
So yeah, it's not uncommon to see people letting their landlord or their employer win disputes because they can't afford a lawyer. And with legal insurance, you can always defend yourself. And by the way, if you happen to be watching this video because you are also navigating life abroad, Feather is actually a great option for immigrants and expats because they offer legal insurance in English. Plus, it's fully digital, so signing up only takes a couple of minutes, and claims and policy management all happen online in one place, no paperwork required, which is really nice. So if you're interested, be sure to click the link down below in the description of this video to check out Feather, and to get 15 euros off legal insurance. Life here involves a lot of paperwork, new rules, regulations, and when the stakes are high and written in a foreign language, it gives me a lot of peace of mind to have legal counsel. But I think what is most important to understand about the cultural difference between suing someone between Germany and the United States is just simply the fact that suing someone here in Germany isn't really as faux pas as it is to the Americans. So in American culture, suing your boss if your position was terminated is generally seen as an extreme measure. But here, getting legal counsel involved is really just seen as a proactive way for you to ensure that you're being treated fairly and that you're receiving all of the benefits you rightly deserve. But you know, when speaking about international differences, particularly between the US and Germany, it's also worth mentioning that when suing someone in Germany, the stakes are comparatively pretty small. But when we as Americans tend to sue, it's kind of a go big or go home attitude, with lawsuits going after major companies, government agencies, and doctors, and the stakes are routinely millions of dollars. While the Germans might be outstanding in the international legal space for their protection of private liability, American notoriety stems from what we might call second-order law. These are the cases that generate controversy, make trial lawyers rich, and provoke relentless calls for reform. And perhaps no court case is more infamous than the McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit. The incident that led to the lawsuit occurred in 1994 when McDonald's customer Stella Liebeck spilled coffee in her lap while driving. When public got wind of the news, the question everybody sarcastically asked was, didn't she know that the coffee was served hot? Well, the thing is, Miss Liebeck actually had a pretty legitimate reason to sue. At its core, Liebeck versus McDonald's restaurants was a product liability case that questioned the scorching temperature of the coffee that was served to her. You see, normal temperature of coffee is between 130 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, about 55 to 60 degrees Celsius. But it's estimated that Liebeck's was served between 180 and 190 degrees, or 82 to 88 degrees Celsius. This caused her to suffer third-degree burns that covered 6% of her body. She sued for $20,000, and it was actually found that the coffee at McDonald's restaurants was indeed slightly hotter than average cups of coffee. But McDonald's was a bit hard-headed in this sense and believed that they would actually win the case and refused to settle, taking the trial all the way to court. And this was a mistake, as the judge awarded Liebeck $200,000, of which she would receive $160,000, as it was felt that she was held 20% responsible instead. The case continued, and she was actually eventually awarded $2.7 million in punitive damages. So to this day, it's why all to-go cups served in the US and internationally actually warn customers that the product is hot. But truth be told, in the United States, like most countries, litigation like this is the exception, not the rule. Ordinary litigation involves accidents, car crashes, and broken contracts. And it's these disputes which dominate the courts. All wealthy democracies use courts to resolve this kind of routine dispute, and those courts resolve them pretty similarly. In the process, they help ensure stability of property rights and facilitate efficient levels of investment, and indeed, a central reason these countries are wealthy lies in the way the courts ensure stability and investment. But the US is truly exceptional in the way that it tends to entertain court cases that would typically be outright thrown out in a German court. Consider the tragic 1987 case where a young boy in Koblenz, Germany apparently drowned after sliding down a 70-meter water slide. The case was pretty exceptional in Germany because it was one of the few significant court battles involving pool injuries. According to court records, he was on a field trip with a group of children. Shortly after arriving, he was discovered unconscious at the bottom of the pool near the water slide. And although the pool managers claimed to have people watching both ends of the water slide, the young boy stayed underwater long enough to sustain severe brain injuries. After 5 years of medical care, he tragically died from complications of his injuries. And what's interesting is a local court and later a federal appeals court actually found that the pool was not to be held liable. The appeals court said that children must learn responsibility and that supervisors might actually hinder development if they watch too closely. And this is in stark contrast to lawsuits in the United States, where fairly similar court cases regularly make the headlines. I mean, any Google search will result in a handful of tragically similar cases, but with families seeking damages that go into the millions, and they routinely win. And you know, I'm neither a judge nor a jury. It's not my place to say whether or not these type of court cases are legitimate, but I bring this up as an example because it really does underscore just how different German and American law is when it comes to legal responsibility and risk. You know, recently we actually made a video here on our channel about the differences between German playgrounds and German parenting, particularly in how German parents give their children a greater level of responsibility and risk. Our playgrounds have jungle gyms with towering ropes courses and rock climbing on actual rocks. In short, playgrounds here are more fun, but also more dangerous. So are swimming pools. High diving boards, which have all but been banished in the United States, are still pretty common here. But the darker side of that system is also equally clear. if a child tragically drowns or suffers a life-altering injury, well, don't really expect playground manufacturers, pool managers, or doctors to share the legal responsibility for the accident. Again, accidents happen. They're a fact of life, and the general consensus here in Germany is that, again, there's a general risk in life. And if you try to avoid all of life's risks, you also avoid its rewards as well. And again, this is precisely where the biggest difference between the US and German legal system lies. The two views on litigation stem from profoundly different beliefs about responsibility and risk, because even if a person does prove a case of negligence, German courts also offer comparatively little financial compensation for pain and suffering. So lawsuits with headlines such as this, or this, or this, generally won't be found in Germany. And while there are some exceptions, German courts also don't typically award punitive damages for negligence. Plus, you aren't going to see ads like this in Germany either.
Speak with a lawyer near you for free. Your lawyer gets paid only if you collect money. If you don't collect, you don't pay.
Germans can't bankroll their legal efforts through American-style contingency fees, in which lawyers charge nothing up front, but instead demand a chunk of any of the money their clients win. And as an American, I truly found this to be quite the culture shock, because punitive damages, particularly in litigation that involves liability and negligence, is kind of a cornerstone of the American legal system. But it's virtually unheard of here in Germany. American plaintiffs can win staggering amounts of money in punitive damages, sometimes far more than they're actually awarded in actual damages. Remember the McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit from earlier on in this video? Well, it's actually a great example of how litigation is kind of used in place of consumer product safety measures, and a reminder to businesses to produce safer products or face huge losses in court. Because here's something interesting. While America likes to tout its reputation as being the land of the free and home of the less government is better government attitude, we have in many ways simply substituted legislation and regulation for litigation. We might not have a law that outright restricts behavior, a product, or an activity, but instead, it's the threat or fear of lawsuits that increase product safety protocols. And this phenomenon, again, of regulation via litigation, is quite common in the US to address a litany of societal issues, from reducing smoking-related illness, gun violence, and obesity, with varying degrees of success. All right, guys, at the end of the day, while differences in American and German litigious behavior certainly does offer up some interesting infotainment, I think there's also a pretty practical life lesson here, because sometimes legal disputes are simply just a part of life. And while we might do our best to avoid a trip to the local Amtsgericht, sometimes it happens. And I can't stress enough just how practical I've personally found it to have legal insurance. And especially as a foreign person living abroad, sometimes unsavory situations happen. They're simply a part of life, even if they're not ill-intended. So again, be sure to check out Feather. They do make signing up for legal insurance super simple, and they're a great choice for English speakers in Germany because, again, they offer everything in English. And also, be sure to let me know down in the comment section of this video on what your experiences have been with the legal system in your neck of the woods. Do you have any interesting stories to share? And I also think it would be super interesting to do a little bit of a viewer poll down in the comment section as well. Do you have legal insurance? And if you do, have you actually used it? Do you find it to be useful? Please let me know down below. I look forward to hearing from you as always. And if you enjoyed what you saw today, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And for more content from the Black Forest family, hit that subscribe button. So, until next time, tschüss!